Hello. This is Abel Pacheco. Super excited to have Mr. MC Laubscher. He's our one of the honored, esteemed, amazing guests from the Cash Flow Ninja. Man, he's been putting out content for years, hundreds and hundreds of episodes, like 600 something plus shows of just really helping others understand, learn more about investing, building cash flow, becoming your own bank, and having a great network of others to help move the ball forward in the same mission, the same direction. And so as they have been helping people achieve self-reliance, independence, and freedom through actionable education, man, we're pumped to have them. So MC, thanks a lot for joining, man. Thanks for coming.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, brother. So let me, pause for a moment and just turn it over to you. Give us in your own words, like tell us who you are and what you do, because I've known you in the industry for a while, but just happy to have you and to our network. For those that have never heard your voice, your accent, your background, man, please elaborate. Tell us who you are, what you do, brother.
Absolutely. I appreciate it. I'm MC Laubscher, so I'm originally from South Africa. I came to the US, it's almost 22 years ago. It's crazy. Time flies when you're having fun, I guess. Yeah. So came to the country. I was just traveling, and I was actually just playing sports here in a league, and just came here with one suitcase, a backpack, $500, a sense of humor, and a sense of adventure. And I found a lot of adventure, and I also saw the incredible opportunity that the U.S. Provides. I think a lot of folks that are born and raised here, and they haven't traveled quite a lot to different countries. They don't understand or realize the incredible privilege that it is of being born in the U.S., number one, and living here. It provides incredible opportunity, and I saw it for the opportunity for what it was. It allowed incredible upward mobility. That's why you have so many rags to riches stories in the U.S. Folks just starting with nothing and just building incredible lives in general. And that's also why I would say a lot of immigrants become very successful here. There actually was an article that a community member in the Cash Flow Ninja world sent to me about the billionaire immigrants. And of course, Mr. Elon Musk from South Africa features on that list too. But they realize the opportunity that's here, and they just go after it. And I kind of had a similar mindset. I was traveling and playing in sports, and I have a background in history and economics. So I love reading history. I love reading and studying economics. And as I was traveling for sports, I came across a book that my mom actually gave me from Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And as I was reading the book, my mind just went, just completely like changed my paradigm, my worldview, my understanding of what money is and what wealth is. And how to think differently about money and about wealth. And I took action. Probably within 6 months of finishing that book, I bought my first property. And during that time, it was very small. I mean, that's why I always say you got to start small. But one of the most incredible light bulb moments for me was after I put tenants in there, they paid rent, and I paid all the expenses associated with that property. There was money left over. And that was a light bulb moment where I said, this is quite incredible. This is cash flow, just like what I read in the book. It's incredible. So It was a big light bulb moment for me, because I looked at that and I said, now I truly understand, what the concept of leverage, from a financial standpoint, and financing the property, putting a small down payment down, financing the rest, and then having tenants in there, leveraging their capital, and then also having a property manager involved, leveraging their resources, collecting the rent. And after doing all of that, I ended up with a profit. And the first question was like, how many times can I do this? How many of these units can you go after? And then, of course, as every real estate investor will know, the lessons start, the school starts in that world. And obviously there's many ups and downs, but that was a huge light bulb moment for me. Then a little further on in my journey, I started to actually read Rich Dad Poor Dad again. I read that book once a year. So I've been reading it now for first time is in 2001. I've been reading it for over 20 years. And I think it was like the fifth or the sixth time that I read it. And I started to realize as I was reading the financial statements that were shared into the book that all these liabilities that showed up on my statement as liabilities were someone else's assets. And I looked at, try to follow the money. Capital flows, where does that end up? Whose asset column does this end up? And it ended up on the banks almost every single time. And I realized, wow, these banks really, they have this figured out. They have this game of capital and wealth figured out. So I realized at that point that I have to figure out a strategy how I can become my own bank and do similar things to what banks do as far as cash flow management. So the first light bulb was cash flow. The second one was cash flow management. And that's a huge, it can absolutely amplify what you're doing as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, and then as an investor. So a lot of folks get excited about the cash flow and it's great, but the cash flow management becomes even more important because we all know, even in business, right? You can have an incredible product, your business can blow up, but you could literally run yourself out of business if you don't have proper cash flow management. And then, as my journey progressed, I was working for a friend that was in the sports circles that I was operating in, and his family owned a large portfolio of multifamily properties. So I started literally at the bottom because I was traveling so much for sports. It was very, very tough to keep down a full-time job at that point. So I was working part-time, starting literally like just cleaning some of the properties, picking up trash, to eventually doing renovations, running construction crews, eventually doing leasing, property management, and eventually being part of his acquisitions team. So, because they were really scaling and growing, and I got my real estate broker's license at that point too. And I remember going after this one particular investor that owned a portfolio of properties that I knew my friend and his partner would be interested in. And I just couldn't get a hold of this person, right? I was young buck, really going after it. And I remember, one day I'd walked early into the office. It was like 7:30 in the morning. And the same investor that I was going after for about 6 to 8 months just walked out of my friend's office, and they just closed the deal, and sold the entire portfolio of properties. And I looked at that and I'm like, there's a learning moment here, MC. There's something to be learned here. And I realized that you have cash flow ninjas, and they operate at a completely different level. I mean, in that market that we were operating in, my friend and his partner, those were the folks that you would go to if you think about buying real estate, if you think about selling real estate, because even if your portfolio of properties isn't something that they would keep, they would probably buy and flip it to an investor that they knew, because they know everyone. They're the cash flow ninjas in their market that would want that portfolio. So they're really dominant players in that market. And I started to realize that it's almost impossible to compete with these guys, but how can I partner with them? And I realized at that point, there was a huge lesson. And then I started to see their community, and a lot of folks have thrown around the term community, but essentially, if you break it down, it's common unity. It's folks that all their interests are aligned. They're all working towards something. And in the process, it could, you obviously leverage the power of the group. And you can have a lot of fun doing that together. And those three big light bulb moments is really, shaped me as an investor of where I was going. And then I started Cashflow Ninja in 2016 as a podcast, just to interview incredible folks, learn more about different niches. And it really was a passion project at that point, but it turned into, now it turned into a full-time educational business. Now we've been downloaded in 180 countries, millions of downloads. We have recorded over 900 shows now between the two shows. We have programs, resources, books. And then I also have two other companies. I have a company called Producers Wealth, where we actually help investors across the United States and all 50 states implement and execute the infinite banking concept strategy, which relates to cash flow management using life insurance, just as they do in family offices. And then I also have a company called Producers Capital Partners, where we leverage the power of community, that common unity. And we have a lot of fun doing it, going after a lot of real estate projects, and then, obviously after a lot of resort deals and so forth.
Right on, man. Well, there's no shortage of things to break into, MC. So, man, I'm pumped that you're here, and just hearing you, there's some similarities, commonality, some themes that a lot of our investors, a lot of our syndicators, operators, wealth managers, just have. And let me point out a few. One, a lot of successful individuals on our show have come from other countries. They are, seeing this great opportunity that is the U.S. And for whatever reason, there's a lot of people here in the U.S. that just don't take advantage of this amazing opportunity. And when I hear somebody, like yourself, who's just, foreign, it's like, hey, I came over here, I saw the opportunity and take advantage of it. And to me, it's super inspiring and also motivating, just to know that, look, there are some obstacles that other people from other countries have to overcome. And if they can do it, so can we. So it's like, man, no shortage of opportunities. So I love, hearing that, first. But a couple other things, another theme and commonality, man, that purple and yellow book, the Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki, man, that is a similar to a lot of us. And once you learn how wealth is, created, and then once you learn assets and liabilities, once you start to learn, some financial literacy, really to you, and if you figure out, oh, what's an asset and what's a liability? Well, what is a liability? A liability to me, like MC said, is, man, that's something that I pay a monthly portion to. And where's that monthly cash flow going to? It's going to a bank's income statement. It's an asset on their side. So the moment you figure that part out, cash flow, how to leverage it, and how to leverage asset versus liability in your personal financial statement, man, you at least how the game is played. Now you can start making moves. Before, if you don't know how the game is played, you don't know what the rules are, right? So
that's right.
I think MC mentioned a couple of those. Any one of those things we could break off and start an individual show. But one of the ones that I was excited most about hearing is becoming your own bank, because that's something that infinite banking, not a lot of people really understand and how to pull off successfully, right? So I think the first time I did it was my single family house, my residence that I was in. We realized, I can get a line of credit with simple interest. And that line of credit, simple interest, I took a big chunk out and paid a big chunk of our residence off, our single family house, our primary homestead. And I realized, even though my line of credit simple interest was 8% at the time or whatever it was, well, I was like, well, why would I pay off a 3% mortgage note? Because one's compounding and the other one is simple. And one's the most aggressive type of interest. And I'm using the least aggressive type to pay off the most aggressive type. And as long as I keep doing that in cycles, I could pay off my note way faster, right? And that was the first, thing that got unlocked for me. So MC, I'd love to hear, what the heck is infinite banking, and how do you become your own bank? Let me just start there.
Yeah, I think if you take a framework, and this is the framework that I've seen from just after interviewing all these cash flow ninjas and just studying what successful folks do, and I really try to simplify everything, and especially from a framework standpoint. So everyone creates capital in one way, shape, or form. They either do it as an employee or a self-employed person or a business owner as an investor. And obviously that's in a different capacity, that is different tax consequences and so forth. But everyone creates capital in one way, shape, or form. And most people are aware of that. And most people are aware of how to increase that, how to grow and scale that, and so forth. But then the second step is, well, where do you position then capital after it's been created? Because it has to reside somewhere. Like, where do you put it? And that's pretty important from a cash flow management standpoint, because you want to put it in a place with the least amount of counterparty risk, which is a massive theme right now in the investment world, which I would urge everyone to pay attention to. So where do you position capital before you deploy it, because as if it's positioned as efficiently and effectively, it's going to amplify what you're doing with regards to your investments, whether you're investing back into your own business or you're growing and scaling your own investment portfolio. So after you've protected and positioned it, then you deploy it into investments that either cash flow or grow. And then the fourth kind of area is just now you have to protect everything. You got to protect your ability to create capital. You have to protect where you've positioned the capital, and you have to protect, obviously, where you've deployed it. And how do you protect that? Well, you protect that by protecting it from the biggest wealth destroyers out there. Number one, taxes. So you have to have a tax strategy in place and work with great tax professionals. And then, of course, you have to have proper asset protection and estate planning in place, because that's the world that business owners and investors obviously live in, and especially in the United States. It's a very litigious society. So, so back to the positioning of capital positioning. So a lot of folks, know that they could position capital in a certain area where they can obviously leverage it and essentially collateralize that. Now, collateralizing something, collateral is just an asset which a lender will identify as an asset and use as collateral for you to establish a credit line secured by that. So what does that mean? Very simply said, real estate investors know about this. If you have some equity in a property, you can establish a line of credit, which is like a HELOC against a single family property, which allows you to access liquidity, which is secured by that equity in the home. So a lot of people know about that. Business owners know about this too. Business owners know that they can, for example, take the equipment of a business, the assets, or even the receivables, and take that to the bank, and the bank would use that as collateral and then give a business loan or a line of credit secured by those assets and receivables to the business owner. And the business owner can then use that to grow the business, hire employees and so forth. Or even we had someone on our network buy real estate. And the real estate, the property that he bought was from where the business was operating from. So you essentially use your business without selling the business to acquire another asset, which was the property. Now you have the business and real estate. And of course, a lot of folks know about the strategy with regards to stocks, certain stock portfolios. It was recently in the news, when Elon was poking around at Twitter that he was essentially going to collateralize some of his Tesla shares. So asset-based lending. So folks are familiar with that. Obviously, there's a risk involved with that. There's margin calls and so forth. You have to manage collateral. The same with gold, silver, art. The same with cryptocurrencies, essentially. Again, pretty, you have to know what you're doing. You have to know how to manage the risk and manage the collateral, especially in a volatile, extremely volatile market. So most folks are aware of all of those things, but what they're not aware of is there's a very, very powerful strategy which utilizes a life insurance vehicle. Most people think life insurance, somebody has to die in order for someone else to benefit. But essentially how the rich and the wealthy family structure life insurance policies, and more specifically, dividend-paying whole life insurance policies with mutual insurance companies, is for cash value. So there's a massive living benefit in that insurance. That's why if you ask institutions, you ask corporations, and you ask very wealthy families and individuals how much life insurance do you want to buy, the answer would be across the board, as much as the carriers will allow me to place, right? Or as much as I could legally do from a banking standpoint as tier one capital, or from a corporate standpoint and so forth. Because they can structure those policies with a massive cash value benefit. And the reason why they love the life insurance strategy is because the principal's guaranteed, the growth is guaranteed in those vehicles. You get access to dividends, which means you can participate in the profits of the life insurance carrier. If they have profits, it's not guaranteed, but most of them have been profitable since the mid-1800s. And then, of course, you can access quote-unquote liquidity by using your cash value as collateral for a credit line, which is also tax-free, so tax-free access. And then The death benefit gets paid tax-free to the beneficiaries. It has asset protection in most states. And one of the great things which you shared is when you place capital in there with this guaranteed growth and getting dividends, and the value increasing every year contractually. When you quote unquote access liquidity, you never touch the capital, the cash value that's in there. So you have uninterrupted compound growth in that vehicle. You can get a loan, which is based on simple interest, and then go and acquire real estate or other investments that produces cash flow and appreciating value and gives you tax benefits. And you can essentially then pay back that loan down, which becomes available. It's like a revolving line of credit, right? So it's pretty powerful stuff. And essentially you're doing what banks are doing in that stage. They're just doing it with other people's money. But you're at this stage, your own banker, you get to benefit and you get to have your capital work in many different places simultaneously. The other thing that I would also say is, when you look at, let's just say, I mentioned counterparty risk right now, especially right now. This should be a major theme for investors. But what is counterparty risk? In this incredible world that we live in, where incredible wealth has been generated, it's been generated on fundamental principles. The rule of law has a result that private property would be honored because there's the rule of law to enforce it. And of course, when private property rights are respected within an environment of rule and law, contracts become very enforceable and is a great way for folks to trade and establish agreements with. So you usually have both parties on both sides of those agreements. So counterparty risk is the probability that someone else is not going to follow through on that, on the promise that is made in that. So why is it such a theme, and why do I look at life insurance companies, essentially, especially mutual insurance companies, in a favorable light as opposed to other entities that is out there for counterparty risk? Well, how are they going to behave in the future? We don't have a crystal ball. Nobody does. Nobody can predict the future. But usually, if you look at past behaviors, whether it's partners, business partners, whether it's community members, whether it's operators, whether it's institutions and so forth, if you look at past behaviors, the probability is very high that they're going to have similar behaviors in the future, right? So they've been very, very solid. Insurance companies have been through, some of them have even survived the Civil War in the United States, the creation of the Federal Reserve in 1913. They've seen economic crashes, economic depressions. They've seen recessions. They've seen monetary resets, which is another topic which a lot of people talk about. So they were around. In 1944 during the Bretton Woods Agreement. They were around in 1971 when Richard Nixon on August 15 took the world essentially off the gold standard by closing the gold window. They've been around through all these chaotic things, and they've been great custodians and great stewards of capital. So that's the infinite banking in short, and that's why also from a counterparty risk standpoint, where this fits into the ecosystem is. From a risk management standpoint, they've been great custodians of capital.
Yeah, that's a great explanation of and understanding for those that if you understand it, you may already be leveraging it. Let's try to put $100,000, $200,000, or if you're a family that has a little bit more wealth, you're trying to put as much of it as you can out there, right? And the insurance companies are saying, yeah. That's here. It's recognized, compounding interest. And by the way, your cash is here. If you want to take out a loan and pay yourself back and pay yourself interest back, you can do it. And the cash value, like MC said, continues to grow. And for investors like us, it's, well, shoot, if I can put my liquid assets here and it continues to grow, but then if I find something that works, property and opportunity and investment, whatever the case may be, I can pull that out, leverage it quickly. It is that liquidity part of it that's also nice, and man, that's the mindset, right? Is how do I put the money in the right bucket to take a Kiyosaki nomenclature? It's like, which cash flow quadrant? Where do I put it? Where should this money be? asset, liability, where is this cash gonna lie? And if I want to put it in the asset column, then man, I need to put in something that generates income when I need it to, right? As opposed to a liability or just cash sitting in a bank, which inflation is eating the heck out of right now, right? So yeah, man, I love it. So how do you, maybe you can elaborate one more step on becoming the bank. For somebody that's never done this, where do they get started? Like, what's the first couple steps that I do? How do I get started in this?
Yeah, you just have to be. I would just say that you have to work with someone that knows how to set up these policies correctly, set it up with the correct carrier, have it structured correctly, because not everybody knows how to set this up properly. That's essentially why I started my company back in 2015, Producers Wealth, because I was having a lot of issues, and then the next step, I was having issues essentially finding someone that set it up correctly with the right carrier. And after I got that done, a crucial part isn't just, and yes, it's important to have it set up correctly. It's important to have it structured with the right carrier, but you want to have someone to guide you through the process and sort of be a strategist alongside you to explore options with you for line of credits, to explore situations with you of what makes sense in that particular situation. So it's a little bit of a different, it's a different relationship which most folks have with insurance professionals. So that's what I would say. We've put together a pretty good program at Producers Wealth. Folks can go to yourownbankingsystem.com where we have I believe it's like 36 minutes of an entire webinar and informational kind of presentation about this and how to get started.
Yeah,
and that's
actually,
at your own banking
now
system.
MC is probably a good time. What if I want to learn more? If I want to get in your world, if I want to, figure out how to get connected to you and your team and the different companies you guys, have serve others. Where should I go to?
Yeah, so Cashflow Ninja is just at cashflowninja.com. There's over 900 episodes there. There's a ton of just resources. There's programs and there's books. And then if you're interested about infinite banking and having it set up properly, like I said, cash is going to be a crucial part of any investor strategy in a volatile world. You could go to yourownbankingsystem.com. As I mentioned, there's an informational webinar there. We recorded it as short as possible because I know folks are very, very busy. So it's only 36 minutes. And if you play it back at double the speed, it's only 18. It's funny. Yeah, it's funny. Everybody's like, it's got to be under 20 minutes. I'm like, well, if you do it at double the playback speed, right? It's under 20. But that's at yourownbankingsystem.com. And, a lot of the stuff that we talk about too at Cashflow Ninja is how to diversify income streams, right? Yeah. How it's so important and how you can do that. One of the things that I shared was the power of community, the power of partnering with folks.
If we can, man, I'd love to talk about this. I know we only have a few minutes. I wish I had you for a few hours, brother. But from now till then, that's a huge part of what we're doing, right? Networking, our community. I like the way you said common unity because. As an individual, my parents didn't come from money. My family didn't have money. Nobody taught me about money. I'm fumbling through it until my, late 30s. Even then, I have a friend that finally said, "Hey, this is what I'm doing. This is how I'm doing it." And it's like, oh shoot, I've never known all this stuff. And now that I'm in communities and networks, and we're all working together, same goal, same alignment of interest, and we're all trying to work together. Now I realize, we can buy bigger things, invest in different assets, invest in vehicles that we wouldn't have been able to do as individuals. And that's, a lot of what's unlocked a lot of our success is teaming up and partnering with others. So it sounds like the same is true on your side. There's no difference there, right?
No. And what I would say to folks too, I wrote a book called The 21 Best Cash Flow Niches. It's available at cashflowninja.com. But the reason why that is, number one, you have to diversify in a world with a lot of uncertainty, change, chaos, and so forth. So you have to be across different asset classes and different niches. But how do you do that? Yes, you can immerse yourself for like 6 to 12 months and learn everything that you need to know about a particular asset class, but then instead of doing everything yourself, partner with someone. And that's how I've been able to invest across different asset classes. They're like, how do you know everything that you're supposed to know, of all these niches that you're in? I'm like, I know enough to be dangerous in every single one, but then I partner with the cash flow ninja in that niche. And that allows me to invest with the best operators in the best deals in the best markets. And I don't have to be the go-to person. Again, common unity, part of a community, part of a syndicated group of folks. So no, absolutely. I love your message and I love what you share around that.
Yeah, man. We're, I would say similar to, we invested in real estate for years. When I was younger, we bought our first property. We did it for 10 years. And it was, when I say me and my wife, and we hadn't figured out, to get into commercial, we hadn't figured out how. I thought we still need to have like millions of dollars myself to buy our first property. And now we're, invested in, 15, 16 syndications. We're launching our third fund pretty soon. And that diversification fund, I'm going to be invested in more assets across Texas and multifamily. And like, I wouldn't have been able to do that without having experts in various different categories across different, not even different asset classes. We're heavily invested in multifamily, a little bit of commercial, triple net lease deals. But for the most part, it's because there are people, markets, assets, somebody with boots on the ground, somebody with expertise. And, like you said, you learn a lot going through it, but am I going to know everything about each deal? No, we've got to have the best possible team, operators, and offices that are trying to figure out how to do it in each one. So love it, the community of the networking, man. Well, with the last few minutes, right? Is there anything we haven't talked about? Anything else that, man, we should touch? We haven't broken into. I haven't asked you the question. Anything in general, particular that would be good for our listener base to hear, man?
Absolutely. One of the things that I mentioned that you should be diversified. And what I mean by that is across different income streams and different niches, because we don't have a crystal ball. We don't know what it brings. And, one thing that I've learned from folks that are either pretty close to a billionaire or there is they're always assuming that they don't know there's something that they're missing. It's funny that when you get to newer investors, they know they know everything, right? And these billionaires are like, "What am I missing? I'm missing something. There's one thing that I'm missing." And it's that one thing. You don't want one thing that you missed to really, really really knock you and wipe you out in a massive pullback or in a recession or a depression or in a market crash. So have a strategy, be diversified. Always think of what you could potentially be missing. Like, what's my blind spot as an investor? What am I not seeing? And have, I mentioned capital allocation. Have capital allocated in different places. I mention always, we all hear cash is trash and the US dollar is losing value. And I've said all those things myself too, by the way. But cash is going to be a great buffer in a volatile world. And then, of course, have some wealth insurance, do some exposure to metals, and then have a diversified income stream from different asset classes. Because again, none of us know everything. We have blind spots, and maybe there's multiple of them, or many more than just a couple. So make sure that we're very well diversified. That if one income stream or one cash flow revenue stream takes a hit, that's not the one that wipes you out completely.
Yeah, good call. I think having the right, I'm not a gold bug by any measure. However, I'm like, you know what? Maybe we should put a few $1,000 in this one. Maybe it should be, a few percentage points of our capital allocation. Maybe we should have a little bit in, crypto. I'm a real estate guy, but 13 years past, I was a tech guy. And maybe we should have a little in this market versus that market. I'm like, okay, a little bit of diversification. I still haven't been able to throw heavy in the stock market, though. Man, that's the diversification that I can't quite get to anymore since 2008. And I saw my portfolio dwindle down. Other than that, though, I'm like, well, as we've created wealth, we got to figure out how to diversify and protect it. And that's part of it, right? Is like make the right decisions for the future and try to figure out what percentages of, what percentage should we invest in what type of asset class, right? So
yeah, I always say that too. Know what you have, know why you have it, and what is it supposed to be doing for you. So in your strategy, when you map that, when you map out a strategy, just ask yourself those questions. And that's to your point. I'm not, I know folks that do very, very well in the stock market. They trade and they're in and out, and they absolutely crush it. It's never been my, it's never been my forte. So I've steered away from that because I couldn't answer those three questions,
Yeah.
So there's other ways to do it, especially in the alternative world. So everything that I have, I know why I have it. I know what it's supposed to be doing for me and what it is currently doing for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, other question, since I didn't realize you have 900-ish shows. I was seeing some 600 and 500, 600, and I was like, holy moly, you've interviewed a bunch of folks. Can you give us any recent themes, right now with what's going on? Fed's raising their interest rates. We're trying to figure out, loan to values on properties. The banks are coming in, lower, 60, 65, where it used to be 70, 75% LTV. I'm sure you have a lot of wealthy investors. Some of those mid-tier, high net worth individuals, 5, 10 to 20, $30 million. And any common themes you see about where they're putting their money and how they're doing it, and just the general theme. It's July 2022 as we record it. So man, what the heck is going on right now? What are you seeing out there?
Yeah, I think that some of the wealthiest investors, one of the themes that have come across in our conversations and even private conversations that I've been having is asymmetry. What are asymmetric opportunities to capitalize on? And if it could. I always try to simplify things for myself. So when I think of asymmetric opportunities, I think of distortions in the marketplace. Areas where things are out of balance. And of course, the energy market is completely out of balance right now. So there's a lot of folks that have done really, really well in the energy market. But here's a couple of things. Jim Rogers, legendary investor, he's three biggest positions right now is silver. And then he was also copper. And folks would say, copper? Well, that's how he's playing the electrical vehicle market. So it's a physical commodity, which he's a commodity guy. So instead of buying shares in Tesla or other companies, he's looking at from a commodity standpoint and saying, well, they're all going to need copper, all of them. So rather than picking the horse in the race, how about I'm basically betting on the supply chain that supplies to all of these horses, right? So that's definitely one way of playing it. And of course, he's huge in agricultural. And there's because of supply chain disruptions, and all of the events the past 3 years, there's massive asymmetric situations. There was even before the war in the Ukraine in agriculture and more specifically food. So, those folks are looking at, and I think like the core principle here too, and I just shared a couple of examples, but the core principle here for investors is what situations are there where there's imbalances, some distortions in the marketplace that I can position myself on the side, which is going to benefit from all of these distortions and capitalize on it. So you could also look at capital flows. That's the one thing is money is always moving in a marketplace. Capital is always moving from one place to another. If it leaves one place, it's moving to another place. So you just have to figure out where is it going? And that's human capital. That's financial capital. Just figure out where that is going and position yourself for it. That's kind of the theme that's come through. And also undervalued assets. Everything has been overvalued. There's a lot of pullbacks. Looking for things that are undervalued. Sticking to Jim Rogers, he was saying to me the one time, I said, what is the biggest lesson, investing lesson that as an investor that you can learn? He said, I haven't really overcomplicated things, MC. He said, I just stand around and wait till the money lies in the corner for me to pick up. And then I walk over there and I pick it up. And I said, well, what's an example? It's like things that are very ugly at one stage, that are very undervalued, that nobody wants to touch, that is going to have an extreme use case in the future. I just picked those up. So that's why he's been huge in commodities. A lot of these folks are looking at a commodity super cycle, and they're looking at businesses or investing in businesses that produce commodities as investors, not just buying stocks and shares of it. So that's some of the themes that I'm seeing.
Yeah, that's awesome. And for the everyday average investor, somebody with 50, 100K, I'm trying to deploy it. Any insights for them? What's the next couple best moves?
Yeah, I would say your best investment is going to be in yourself in this time. And I know it sounds cliches, but what we're already into right now, I believe it's already hard times for a lot of folks, and I believe it's going to be much harder. I think the economy in the next 6 to 12 to 18 months is going to be extremely hard for most folks. So what survives hard times? Hard people and hard assets, so how hard can you become as an individual? How rugged and how battle hardened in a recession, and how do you become that? Well, training, whether it's emotionally, physically, spiritually, increasing your financial IQ. So if you're just getting started, this is a very exciting time to get started, by the way. A lot of folks are like, man, that sounds gloomy and doomy. I'm like, the opportunities, this is where fortunes are made, is in tough economic environments, because you're going to get tested, and it's not for everyone. So hard people and hard assets, I think, are the thing. So once you become that hard person that can survive a very brutal economic environment, and you've invested in yourself, then you look at other hard assets, things that you can touch and feel. That, because I've also believed with this commodity super cycle and with hard assets, I think that's where value is going to be maintained. And of course, if you look at Maslow's hierarchy, just position yourself there, where real estate is a very big part of that: shelter, clothing, food, and so forth. So the basics, in tough economies, you go back to basics. So hard people, hard assets, and look at Maslow's hierarchy when you have to invest or create and build businesses.
Yeah, love it. Well, MC, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. Anybody that's listening to the show, I would encourage you, hit rewind, get a notepad and paper, take a few notes. I learned a few things. I took more than at least a half a page here for myself, and I'm typing 8 font. So I'm excited to hear and implement some of these things. A lot of them are, just really good principles and refreshers, and some of the stuff you hear about, and it's time for you, actionable education if you're listening. So I encourage you, man, none of this stuff works unless you go take some action. You got to employ something. You got to put something to work right now. So MC gave us a few. Invest in yourself if you're just starting. Great time. My wife's super excited too, MC. She's like, oh, everything I feel like we've been positioning the last 5, 6, 10 years. I kind of feel like it's that time. And so we started in 2008, but we kind of came on the tail end of the bad market, and we were buying in 2008. So we've kind of been on the upside, and now it's like, okay, now I feel like, really great opportunities and trying to capitalize. So anyways, excited. But thank you very much, MC. Thanks for your time, brother.
Thank you so much.
All right. Bye, everyone. See you in the next show.